My name is Sarah Thompson. I am 29 years old and I live in Dallas, Texas. On November 12th, 2023, I died for 3 minutes.
And what I saw on the other side during those minutes changed everything. What I learned about life and eternity will leave you questioning everything you know. I've always kept myself busy, sometimes too busy. As a marketing manager at a growing tech company, I spent most of my days immersed in data, reports, and endless meetings. Life had a rhythm to it, one that I followed without much question. Wake up early, work hard, work harder, grab coffee with friends, and check emails while waiting for dinner. Life, at least on the surface, seemed perfect. The sun would always catch my face as I biked to work, just another reminder that I lived in one of the most vibrant cities in Texas. I loved the hustle of Dallas, the buzzing energy that never seemed to stop, the sound of traffic, people laughing outside restaurants, and the clink of keys on my laptop made me feel like I was part of something bigger, something important. But inside, I often felt disconnected. Even my friendships were wrapped in a pattern. I had a great group of people, sure, but I'd often find myself distracted. My best friend Lily would call me out. "Sarah, you're here, but you're not here. What's going on?" I'd smile, brush it off with an excuse about being overwhelmed with work, and we'd move on. Lily was the kind of person who thrived on deep connections, while I was just going through the motions. I was close with my parents too. I'd see them on weekends for brunch, and we'd talk about my accomplishments, my upcoming projects, my new goals. I'd tell them how I was saving up for a new car, or how my career was on the rise. My mom would smile with pride, and my dad would nod, his voice filled with that calm encouragement he always gave. I loved them deeply, but the reality was that we rarely touched on anything deeper than my next promotion. The more I focused on my career and goals, the more I began to drift. I'd skip church, telling myself that I'd get back to it when I had the time. I'll catch up with God later, I'd think, convincing myself that my success and hard work would eventually bring me peace. I had everything I thought I needed: friends, family, a job I loved, a future that seemed mapped out ahead of me. But there was always this nagging feeling, something unspoken, telling me that maybe I wasn't truly living the life I was meant to. I didn't realize it then, but I had been chasing a version of success that wasn't aligned with the eternal perspective I was meant to have. At night, when I would lie in bed, exhausted from the day, I'd stare at the ceiling and wonder if there was more to life than just this. I told myself that my hard work would pay off, just a few more years, and I'd have it all figured out. But the truth was, I didn't know if I was living the life I was called to. On the outside, everything seemed perfect. On the inside, I was merely surviving, living in the moment, yes, but only the moment that was right in front of me. The next work deadline, the next promotion, the next step forward. The world was full of noise, and I had become too comfortable in it. The truth, I had neglected the one thing that would truly give my life meaning: my relationship with God. But I wasn't ready to admit that, not yet. I was on my e-scooter, gliding down the sidewalk, my mind racing ahead to my meeting later that day, when it happened. The sharp screech of tires, the abrupt jolt, and then, nothing. I was falling, but there was no pain, just stillness. And in that stillness, I felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't thinking about the next task, the next deadline, the next promotion. In that moment, nothing mattered but the quiet that was suddenly all around me. I didn't realize then, but I was about to step into a world that would change everything. The sound of screeching tires, the blinding flash of headlights, it all happened so fast, quicker than I could process. One moment, I was gliding along the sidewalk on my e-scooter, my thoughts consumed with work and the endless to-do list waiting for me at the office. The next, I was falling, and everything went dark. For a split second, there was nothing but stillness. A strange sense of calm washed over me, as if time had completely stopped. My body felt weightless, my mind disconnected from the world around me. But then, as quickly as it had all begun, the pain hit. My head collided with the ground, and I felt my body crumple beneath me. I don't remember the details, the screams, the shock, the fear, but I remember the overwhelming silence that followed. And then, nothing. I could hear distant voices, but they felt muffled, far away. I tried to open my eyes, but they wouldn't cooperate. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I tried to call out, but nothing came. In the moments between life and death, I realized I was floating, detached, like I was no longer in my body, yet I could still feel everything happening around me. My mind raced. Was I dying? Was this what it felt like to leave everything behind? I tried to hold on to something, anything, but the more I fought, the more I was swept into the quiet. I began to wonder if I was already gone. The familiar sounds of the city seemed so far away, as if they belonged to a different world entirely. There was no pain anymore, no pressure, no deadlines, just peace. But that peace quickly shifted into a haunting realization. I was standing in a vast, empty space. It felt strange, almost unnatural, a place I couldn't place. The air was thick with a light that was neither blinding nor dim. It was ethereal, almost divine. The surroundings were so unfamiliar, so much more real than anything I'd ever known on earth. As I stood there, frozen in awe, a voice spoke. It wasn't a voice I recognized, yet it filled my being with an overwhelming sense of calm. It was the kind of peace I had never known on earth, but it also carried something else, urgency. I felt it before I saw it. There was a figure approaching me, a light so bright I could hardly look at it, yet it didn't hurt my eyes. The figure was peaceful, radiating warmth and love, something I had never felt in my rush to achieve success on earth. A presence that spoke to me without words, but in a way I understood completely. "This is where you will be if you continue down this path," the voice said. "Your life, your pursuits, your distractions, they are fleeting. You are chasing things that do not last. Now is the time to reflect." I didn't know what to say. I wanted to ask questions, to beg for another chance, but in that moment, I realized that this wasn't just about me. It was about my choices, my life, my eternity. The voice spoke again, this time with more intensity. "You've been living in a way that will not bring you peace. The distractions, the rush, the pursuit of worldly things, none of it will last. You must live with eternity in mind. Do you understand?" I had no answers. I had lived my life, thinking success, promotions, and approval from others were the things that defined me. But standing there, bathed in this light, I realized how little I had truly lived for the things that mattered most. My relationship with God had been neglected. My priorities were all wrong. I thought of my family, of my parents, my friends, and my coworkers, and I felt regret. I had been so focused on building a career, on earning recognition, that I hadn't lived in a way that honored God or loved others with the depth He calls for. I had been living for myself, for fleeting success, thinking that would fill me, but it hadn't. I still felt empty. And then, just as quickly as it had started, the vision faded, the light grew dim, and the voice grew softer. I was being pulled back to earth, back to the body I had left behind. When I opened my eyes, the world around me felt surreal. I could hear the faint sounds of voices, the hurried footsteps of paramedics, but they felt distant, as if they were happening in a world I was no longer part of. I could see the flashing lights of ambulances, feel the cold metal of the stretcher beneath me, but none of it seemed real. I tried to speak, but my mouth wouldn't move. I was aware of everything happening, but I couldn't connect with it. The weight of my body felt foreign to me, like I was disconnected from it entirely. I realized I was still alive, but I wasn't the same person I had been just moments ago. I didn't know how long I had been in that place, that in-between space where time seemed irrelevant. It felt as though I was suspended in the stillness, detached from the world I had just left behind. The noise of the ambulance, the flashing lights, and the shouts of paramedics, all of it seemed so distant, like a memory I could barely recall. My body, my earthly form, felt so far away, as though I had already stepped beyond it. But there was someone that made me feel both comforted and perplexed. A presence, glowing with an ethereal light, filled the space around me. It wasn't blinding, but it was the brightest thing I had ever seen, and yet it didn't hurt my eye. I didn't fully understand, but I knew deep within my soul that this presence was not just light, it was life itself. Then it spoke. It wasn't a voice I had ever heard before. It was not a voice of this world, but one that seemed to resonate deep within me, as if it came from the very essence of my being. "Do you know why you are here, Sarah?" I nodded, or at least I tried to. It was as if my body was still bound by earthly limitations, but my soul was free to respond. "I don't understand," I whispered in my mind, my thoughts trembling with the enormity of what was happening. "You are here to see what you have not seen, to feel what you have not felt. You have lived distracted, chasing the things that do not last. But there is more to life than the pursuit of success and approval. There is an eternal purpose for you. As the words echoed in my mind, I felt a surge of emotion, fear, regret, and a deep longing for something more than what I had known. I had spent so much of my life pushing forward, always working toward the next goal, the next accomplishment, the next pride. But what did it all mean if there was nothing beyond it? The presence of light shifted, and I saw a vast field, glowing softly under a sky that didn't look like any sky I had seen on Earth. The colors were beyond description, shimmering with hues that didn't exist in our world. I felt a pull toward it, as though my soul recognized this place, this moment, as where I was meant to be. Come, the voice called gently, and I followed, walking toward the field. The air was thick with a peaceful stillness, and every step felt as though I was walking deeper into something more sacred. I couldn't explain it in words, but I knew this wasn't just a place, it was a realm of truth, a place where nothing could hide. It was here that I would see everything I had missed, everything I had chosen to ignore while I focused on the distractions of my life. As I walked, a figure appeared before me. It was a person, someone I instantly recognized. My grandmother, who had passed away years ago, stood there, her smile as warm as I remembered it, her face, radiant and peaceful, was aglow with a beauty that transcended anything I had ever seen. She reached out her hand, and when I took it, I felt a wave of love and acceptance flood through me, like I had been embraced by all the warmth I had missed in my life. "Sarah," she said softly, "you are here to understand, to see the truth of your life, and to know that it's not too late to change." I looked at her, tears welling in my eyes, as memories of her love and wisdom filled my heart. I had taken her love for granted when she was here. I had been too busy to truly appreciate the depth of her faith, of the way she lived her life with purpose, always focused on the eternal. I had missed it all. But what does all of this mean? I asked, my voice trembling. What am I supposed to do with it? Her expression softened and she led me through the field, showing me moments of my life, moments where I had chosen the wrong path, moments where I had ignored what truly mattered. I saw myself, young and full of ambition, prioritizing work, success, and approval from others, while neglecting my relationship with God, with my family, and with my true calling. It was as if I had been given everything I wanted in this world, but I had missed the most important part of it all, the eternal perspective. "It is not too late, my dear. You still have the chance to choose." I felt her words like a wave crashing over me. I had the choice, but I had been blind to it. For so long I had focused on what was in front of me, chasing the next achievement, the next approval, the next step, but I had never truly lived with eternity in mind. "You must live for what lasts," she said, her voice echoing softly in the space around me. "Your success on earth means little if you do not live with an eternal purpose. You are not here to accumulate wealth, status, or approval. You are here to live in God's light, to serve others, and to love deeply." The more she spoke, the more I felt the weight of my choices. I had been so caught up in the fleeting things of this world, but now in this place, I understood. There was more, so much more, and I had missed it, and then I understood. The message was clear. Living in the light of eternity meant living with God's will at the forefront, making every moment count, not for myself, but for something great. As the vision began to fade, I felt the warmth of my grandmother's hand slip away. The field, the sky, and the light began to recede, and the world I had left behind came rushing back to me. I could feel my body again, heavy, painful, but alive. I was coming back, but I wasn't the same person. I had seen the truth. I had been shown a life that was meant to be lived with purpose, and I would never be the same again. When I returned to the earthly realm, I felt disoriented, like waking up from a dream too vivid to be real. My surroundings were familiar, but I knew deep down that I was not the same person who had left. The paramedics were still around me, frantic, calling my name, trying to revive me. I could hear their voices, but they felt distant, as if I was no longer part of their world. The world I had just experienced was so real, so overwhelming, with its peace and clarity. And now, I was back to the noise, the rush, the clutter of a life I had barely understood. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout that I had seen something that changed everything. The truth, the purpose, the life I had been meant to live. But all I could do was stare up at the sky, as the world around me rushed to catch up. The voices faded as I was rushed to the hospital, but the stillness of the experience I had just left behind stayed with me. My thoughts were consumed with the lessons I had been shown. the eternal truths that were now deeply etched into my heart. For the first time, I could see clearly. I understood that the way I had lived, so distracted, so focused on the fleeting pursuits of this world, had been a life half-lived. I thought of my grandmother's face, radiant and full of love, her words echoing in my mind, "You must live for what lasts." The more I thought about it, the more it became clear. I had lived for everything that wouldn't matter in the end. I had lived for recognition, for success, for approval, but I hadn't lived for God, for eternal purpose, for His will in my life. I had neglected the most important relationship of all. In the hospital, as I lay there with my body bruised and broken, I felt a deep sense of guilt. How had I missed it all? How had I failed to see the truth while I was so busy chasing after everything that could never fulfill me? I felt as if I had squandered precious time that could have been spent loving others more deeply, prioritizing my faith, and living with eternity in mind. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something else. It wasn't too late. It wasn't too late to change, to realign my life, and to start living with the purpose I had been shown. The hospital room was filled with the sterile scent of antiseptic, and the beeping of the machines monitoring my recovery became a quiet reminder of the life I had just come back to. But it wasn't the same life. I wasn't the same person. The days following my accident felt like I was living in a dream. Everything was so vivid, so clear, but the world around me felt foreign. I found myself reflecting on the time I had spent focused on material success, the countless hours I had worked toward promotions, the friendships I had neglected, the family members I had taken for granted, and most of all, the relationship with God that I had barely nurtured. I thought about the choices I had made, the moments when I had skipped church because I was too busy, or when I had ignored my heart's true desires in favor of climbing the corporate ladder. I had lived with a limited perspective, one focused on the temporary, when all along, God had been calling me to live with eternity in mind. But as I lay there in my hospital bed, I realized something else. The revelation I had received was not a condemnation. It was an invitation to start living with intention. I wasn't being punished for my mistakes. I was being given another chance, a chance to make it right, to live in a way that truly honored God, a chance to realign my life with the eternal purpose I had seen in the afterlife. "You must live for what lasts," my grandmother had told me, and those words haunted me, but not with shame, rather with clarity. They were words of grace. The truth was that God had been waiting for me to step out of my distractions and fully embrace the life He had always intended for me. In the stillness of that hospital room, I made a promise to myself and to God. I would live different. I would no longer be bound by the desire for worldly success. I would no longer neglect my relationship with Him. I would serve others with a heart full of love, prioritizing His will above all else. The road ahead would not be easy. I knew it wouldn't be. I would have to make choices every day to keep my focus on what really mattered, but I was no longer afraid. I knew now that my purpose was bigger than my career or my accomplishments. It was about fulfilling God's plan for me, living a life of service, and loving others as He loved me. I took a deep breath, feeling the air fill my lungs in a way I had never experienced before. I was alive in a way that I had never truly been before. I wasn't going to waste this second chance. I wasn't going to squander the time I had left. As the days went on, I began to slowly heal, both physically and spiritually. I reached out to my family, to the friends I had pushed aside, to those I had neglected. I began to rebuild the relationships that mattered most, and I started prioritizing my faith. I began attending church again, not because I felt obligated, but because I felt a deep desire to reconnect with the God I had once put aside. The world still buzzed around me, still filled with distractions, still calling for my attention, but I now had a new lens through which to view it, one that focused on eternity. I was no longer bound by the fleeting goals of this world. I was living with a new sense of purpose, a purpose that transcended the momentary and reached into forever. I woke up in the hospital, the sterile smell of antiseptic heavy in the air. The soft beep of a machine monitoring my vitals hummed in the background, but it was the feeling inside me that was different, new, changed, and full of purpose. The world I had once known seemed distant, almost like a dream, and I realized with startling clarity that the person who had left that body during the crash was not the same person now lying in the hospital bed. The first thing I did was take a deep breath. It was a small action, but it felt so different, like air had never tasted so sweet. I was alive, and for the first time in my life I truly understood what that meant. But it wasn't just my physical body that was healing. There was something deeper, something inside me, that was beginning to heal as well. I sat up slowly, feeling the stiffness in my body. My ribs ached, and I had a pounding headache, but I didn't mind. I was back. I had been given a second chance, a chance to live differently. As I looked around the hospital room, my mind drifted back to what I had experienced during my NDE, the light, the peace, the words of my grandmother, the divine message that I had been shown. I had seen what truly mattered, and it was so much more than the career I had pursued, the success I had chased. I had lived for things that would fade, but now I understood the urgency of living for what lasts, the eternal purpose that had always been right in front of me. My phone buzzed on the table beside me, and I saw a message from Lily. "Hey girl, I heard what happened. Can't wait to see you. You're gonna be okay, right?" I smiled, knowing Lily would be there for me as always. But it wasn't just the physical recovery that I needed now. It was the deeper healing, the restoration of my soul that I was beginning to grasp, and I knew it was time to start walking that path. The doctor came in a few minutes later, checking my vitals and giving me the standard post-accident update, but I could barely focus on his words. My mind was elsewhere, filled with the clarity of what I had learned. I thought about the time I had wasted, the days and weeks spent striving for success, all while neglecting what really mattered, the people I loved, the faith I had ignored, the deeper connection to God that I had put off. It all seemed so trivial now, so fleeting. But in that moment, I also understood something else. It wasn't too late to change. It wasn't too late to live differently. I didn't have to keep running in the same direction, chasing after things that wouldn't matter in the end. I could choose a different way, one rooted in faith, purpose, and love. I sat up a little straighter, looking out the window of my hospital room. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the city of Dallas. It was beautiful, but it wasn't the beauty of success or fame. It was the beauty of life, of being alive, of being given another chance to make things right. I had been granted the gift of a new perspective, one that was not just about me, but about the way I could live for others, serve others, and glorify God with my life. The nurse came in to check on me, but I wasn't paying attention to the usual questions about my recovery. My heart was full of something else, the urgency that I had felt during my NDE, the reminder that this life is temporary, but eternity is forever, was still with me. It was like a fire inside, a light that had been lit and would never go out. I had seen what happens when we live with our eyes focused on the eternal, and I wasn't about to ignore it anymore. That evening, I sat down and made a list, simple things I had never made room for before, spending more time in prayer, attending church regularly, reaching out to my family and friends with the love I had neglected to show. I wanted to volunteer, to give my time to others who were in need, to make my life about something greater than myself. I wanted to serve. I wanted to make every moment count for something that mattered. As I began to make these commitments to myself, I felt a sense of peace I had never known. The fear that had once controlled me, the anxiety about my career and success, seemed small now. I had seen beyond it all. I had witnessed eternity, and I knew with all my heart that the world I had been so focused on was only a small part of a much greater reality. Later that evening, I called my parents. I told them what had happened, not just about the accident, but about what I had seen. I shared with them how deeply my life had been impacted, and how I was going to live differently moving forward. They listened, and I could hear the joy in their voices. They were relieved that I was alive, yes, but they also understood what I was saying. They had always known that my focus needed to be broader than the goals I had set for myself. Now they knew I saw it too. The next few days passed in a blur of visits from friends and family, and in between those visits, I found myself reflecting deeply on the message I had received. I had been living a life full of distractions, but now I was called to live a life full of meaning. I was called to live in the light of eternity. And so I began. I didn't wait. I knew now that time wasn't guaranteed. I couldn't keep putting things off, waiting for the right moment. The right moment was now. I had been given the greatest gift of all, the chance to live my life with purpose, to serve others, to live for something far beyond the fleeting goals I had chased, and I wasn't going to waste it. I've learned that life isn't about the success you accumulate or the titles you wear, it's about living with purpose, living for what truly lasts. After my NDE, I realized how much time I wasted chasing fleeting goals instead of focusing on what matters most: my faith, my relationships, and the impact I can make on others. But here's the thing, I'm not alone in this struggle. We all get distracted by life's noise. So let me ask you, are you really living for the things that matter most? Or are you just chasing what the world tells you to chase? Think about it. If Sarah's story left you thinking, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think it's possible to live with an eternal perspective in today's world, or are we just too caught up in the hustle? Drop your thoughts, we want to hear your opinion. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another powerful near-death experience. The truth is, there's so much more to life than we often see, and Sarah's journey is just the beginning. Stay tuned for more stories that will challenge everything you thought you knew about life, death, and what truly matters.